Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Glenda Alva, and I'll be the moderator for this stopwatch session. We have 3 speakers. I'll let them introduce themselves. Each speaker will speak for 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and at the end of the 3 presentations, I'll have them all at the front, and you can ask them questions.
Hi, very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Leong. I'm the Electronic Resources Librarian from the Singapore Management University Library. So this is the topic of my 6-minute, 40 seconds presentation. Okay, so let me just start with some facts and figures about the university and about the library. As you can see from here, we are a very young university. We are only established in the year 2000, that's 18 years old. We're not a very comprehensive university. We do not have engineering or medicine. That's the 6 schools that we have. These are the more students and the faculty. We have 2 libraries in the university, centralized processing. It's a number of professional librarians and paraprofessionals in the library. The main takeaway from this slide is the collection size, and you can see from here that we primarily invest our money on e-resources. In fact, we have an e-preferred collection policy. So let me rewind back to the year 2011, 2012. What happened on that year? That's the year where I joined the university. So I was the ER librarian, e-resources librarian there. So as you can see from the picture here, so being so-called the electronic resources librarian, I was the only one fixing the ER light bulb. Okay. In fact, I wasn't the only one, so I do have the support of one paraprofessional, and we were doing all these stuff to make ER works in our library, like from negotiation, licensing, sushi usage, and so on and so forth. So as you can see from the chart over there, we spend actually 90% of our budget on e-resources. So I believe there's some kind of misalignment here. So one full-time equivalent versus 90% e-resources, so something has gone wrong. And I'm guessing that many libraries are facing the same issue, I'm not sure. So 6 years later, which is now 2018, I managed to get 6 additional staff to be helping me to do all those ER tasks, which includes 2 professional librarians and 4 paraprofessionals. Not a bad deal, huh? So 6 years, 6 additional staff, and we do not have additional headcounts. So these are the tasks that I could get the additional manpower to be helping me. They can do things like digitizing and creating license record in an IMS, configuring and monitoring sushi, and so on and so forth. I'll not go through the list. So apparently I did not lose my job. As you can see from here, my face is still in the picture. So I'm still there to oversee the whole operation, more of a senior managerial role. And as you can see from here, the skill sets are very diverse, very new. I'm sure it's very daunting for a lot of the library professionals because they're very well trained in print-related workflows. So let me walk through a series of events and initiatives that starts from the year 2013 to 2015, which I will call the forming the storming years. As I mentioned, so we are a very small and young university. So our university actually did have a lot of emphasis on operational excellence. So we have an Office of Business Improvement unit, which come up with this Lean Six Sigma Green Belt training program, basically to equip staff with skills to pursue better productivity, innovation, and for everyone to be thinking of working in an environment where we will do culture and assessment all the time when we are doing our day-to-day job. At about the same time, we also have Office of Finance. We come up with this RCA, Responsibility Center of Accounting project. It's a accounting principle which actually regard the library as a cost center. So what it does is for us to control costs, to demonstrate value and increase transparency of how resources are being utilized in our library. In the year 2015, that's where the Singapore government came up with this Skills Future program. So besides leveraging on organizational changes, we also leverage our nationwide movement. So in the year 2015, the Singapore government came up with this Skills Future program with the intention to provide Singaporeans additional opportunities to be trained by identifying skill gaps that's required in the workforce and providing highly subsidized courses for all Singaporeans. So at that time, we also leverage on this topic bus, and we call it Future Skills instead of Skills Future. So we also come up with a lot of training programs to allow our staff to be trained, untrained, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Yeah, basically to provide them with additional learning opportunities. Okay, so this is from the year 2015 onwards. That's where the real show starts. Because in the year 2015, our library moved to a new library management system. We are embarked on a migration from Millennium to Alma. So if you guys know Alma, Alma itself, a lot of workflows are very integrated. So that's actually the best opportunity for us to make changes. And indeed, that was the year where we made several major changes. 1 year later, we have a new law library in the university, so that doesn't mean that we have additional headcount. So what happens is that, as I mentioned earlier, we do centralized processing. So there's increased workload for everybody actually when we have a new library. So that's the time where we leverage on the fact that we have a new law library. So we ask everybody to think of what they have to do to increase productivity of their day-to-day job. This new vacancy is not about law library, but that was the year where we jumped on the opportunity where the staff resigned, and I think that's usually the best time for us to create a new vacancy, a new position. And what I did was, I draw a new JD for a staff which is focused on ER tasks, instead of print. Okay, I need to go a bit faster. So I will call this the forming, storming, I will call this the norming and performing years. So I kind of relate this to the Tuckman concept of group development. Okay, so in all, we aim and strive towards the following work ethos. I'm not going to run through every single one of them, but you can read for yourself. So we will continually assess and improve processes, minimize hands-off, and so on and so forth. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what's next? We're not complacent as change is the only constant, as we all know. So we would like our staff to keep abreast with emerging trends and issues that's related to technical services. I'm sure we heard a lot of these topics in the conference these 2 days, like AI, data mining, and so on and so forth. So we are actually planning the staff for the future, a changing future. And as I meant, as the theme of the conference says, spring is coming. So we're going to prepare our staff by a time where there might be a day where the light bulb is not just a pure, simple looking light bulb, but it might be operated by a robotic arm, or something like that, yeah. Okay, that's my last slide, so thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Gall. I am the Acquisitions Manager at the University of Waterloo Library. And I'm here today to talk to you a bit about a transformation that has taken place at our library over the last few years, whereby our Acquisitions Department has evolved to become the Collection Development Department. A little bit of background on our institution. It was founded in 1957. We have a current FTE of almost 40,000 students. Our library budget is $8.5 million Canadian, and it's been that way since about 2013. The library is running on Ex Libris's Voyager ILS, which it has been doing since the late 90s. So our workflows are set up mainly for print, but have evolved over the years. Under the previous structure, the department head was also responsible for all subscriptions and continuing resources. Firm monograph ordering was handled independently, and the individual responsible for approvals was actually over in the cataloging department. This setup was very siloed, even though everyone was ordering resources that were drawing on the same budget. Within the new structure, the functions of firm and approval ordering, as well as subscription management, are now spread across 3 acquisitions associates, with 1 shared job description, making them jacks of all trades. We also added licensing, an e-resource access team, and a data analyst, so the department is now concerned with all aspects of adding material to the collection, not just the purchasing of it. The benefits of this new structure are that the team is more agile, able to pivot resources and efforts to certain functions as work ebbs and flows. This lets us maintain service standards when busy cyclical times arise throughout the year, and we've seen greater communication and understanding of the impacts of the work. So what sort of infrastructure did we put in place to help facilitate this transformation? A major piece was the addition of request tracking software. This allows for work to be tracked and organized so that things aren't getting lost in individual inboxes. Work can then be triaged to staff members with available capacity and more effectively passed between units. And we also have the ability to access the history of a request. We also implemented forms, the first of which was for rush monograph ordering. These were designed to be dynamic and able to accommodate different types of requests while ensuring all necessary information is included in the request. The information in these forms is presented in a standardized format and sent as an RT ticket, which can be assigned to a staff member. Another major initiative in shifting the department was our efforts to process map some troublesome workflows. This method involved capturing all the current steps in the process, listing all the problems, mapping an ideal state that would solve those problems, and generating steps to implement for solutions. The results allowed us to eliminate waste and over-processing. We also attempted to limit the number of publishers from whom we purchased directly, opting to purchase through vendors wherever possible. This reduced the number of vendors we used and consolidated the volume of orders. We made sure that specialized vendors were still accounted for so that the quality of the collection wasn't compromised, and it helped reduce variations in workflows for everybody. A significant improvement to our book ordering process was the implementation of Gobi Export, which is a service provided by our major book vendor, Gobi. Previously, orders were being manually entered one at a time, with a bib record being imported or created from scratch. Gobi Export facilitates bulk order processing, so now we can do hundreds of orders at once. We also attempted to eliminate unpredictable standing orders by having the individual issues come through as notifications in Gobi for our librarians. Standing orders have been difficult to budget for, and some selectors had run into trouble in the past where they would eat up a small monograph budget. This change provided more control for selectors over the expenditure and the content, and has prevented any major surprises in the budget. The addition of licensing and copyright librarian and a developer to our department provided an opportunity to create a homegrown ERM to help track, organize, and store license information. The system combines information on the purchase, the license terms, and the resource in one spot, and also feeds into our link resolver. Changes were also made to the invoicing section. We reviewed and refined EDI invoice profiles in order to reduce the amount of manual cleanup necessary. We also asked to be invoiced in the native currencies, wherever that was possible, rather than a converted Canadian dollar, which allows us to identify true price increases instead of having the misleading information that happens when you have foreign exchange in there. By far the biggest change was when we shifted our operations to digital-based invoicing rather than print. Previously, we had required paper copies as the copy of record, and this meant that we were printing a lot of PDF invoices. We consulted with our records experts, and now we have digital invoices that we house on SharePoint, and they can be searched. We also changed our budget management to affect more fiscally responsible approaches. Using rather complex spreadsheets, we're able to identify items not yet invoiced in the previous fiscal, duplicate payments and other anomalies, and account for them in our budget request. We also hold back a percentage of the monograph budget to hedge against swings in currency. We added processes to help ensure a more accurate close to our fiscal as well. We now regularly run not yet invoiced reports to identify invoices for which we budgeted but haven't yet received. We also started doing line-by-line comparisons with our campus finance department to identify any discrepancies between what we say we spent and what they have on record. The outcome of all these changes has been a reduction in troublesome backlogs in ordering and invoicing. We now have more even ordering conducted throughout the year, as you can see by the red line that's halfway through there. This graph shows we were experiencing very inconsistent order volumes, which made it difficult when the process had severe spikes. But we've been doing much better this year, and now we can accommodate those spikes whenever they do arise. We have a more versatile department capable of responding to these cyclical work peaks throughout the year. This has enabled us to set and meet consistent service standards. As well, our budget is also more accurate as the orders are reflected in the system more quickly and payments are made soon after, so selectors can be more confident in their fund balances. We still have work to do though. We are currently shifting subscription end dates to the calendar year end, as this will help with maximizing the effectiveness of bulk ordering and reduce the number of invoices that we have to chase at the end of the year. We're going to be reviewing other methods of collection development such as DDA and EBA, and soon we will be implementing ALMA, which we will take advantage of the efficiencies that come from that. In short, the past 5 years have seen a number of initiatives put in place to streamline workflows, take advantage of a digital environment, provide greater transparency, and utilize data in a way that ultimately enables us to be more fiscally responsible stewards of the collection budget. Thanks again. My contact information is up there. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Okay, so we can get started now. My name is Patrick Rowan. I'm from North Carolina Central University, and I'm talking about branding and innovation in libraries. And this is a perspective of a researcher on the process of library branding at the overarching system level, branch level, and level of collections. What's a brand? It's a sign, symbol, logo, name, or other identifier used to distinguish a person, place, or thing. In libraries, the focus is going to be on the values of the library. So, okay. In the library brand, most of the traditional aspects of brand from the corporate world are included in library brands. but the mission and values are preeminent, and the model of service to which the library aspires is what focuses on. Okay. And this is just a slide showing a definition of collection building. What we want to do here is find evidence for branding on the collection level, but collection building is broad, while brand building has to do with developing identifiers for brands, symbols, and specifically is representative of the model of service to which the library aspires. In this slide, you sort of see how those two models compete with each other. Brand building is focused on drilling down to particular attributes, an identity, a core, a brand essence, which represents an organization, while collection building is more universal or comprehensive vision. Some thoughts. Brands or identifiers always exist, although they may be weak, unclear, or insufficiently formed. And branding just gives us a way of talking about certain phenomena that are difficult to talk about otherwise. Okay, here are the three public libraries and the associated branches that I'm talking about. Southwest Chatham Library and Live Oak Public Libraries, Imaginon at Charlotte Mech, and Richland, Maine and Richland Library. Okay, this slide is just to give you an idea of how literal symbols of the brand, in the case of Live Oak, the tree in an early version of its logo, are transformed and become latent or hidden in some way. The book is superimposed on a horizon. And here, in this particular slide, you see some of the attributes of Southwest Chatham Library that reflect its branding along the Live Oak line, such as native plants and landscaping, low-flow water fixtures, and ecologically friendly features. Okay, in the next slide, you see a search in the Live Oak's Public Library catalog, and I'm looking here for any traces of the brand identity. And you can see in this particular Southwest Regional, it's highlighted in red, there's an increased evidence of resources associated with the oak. This slide, now we move to Richland Library. This slide represents an early version of the website, and when David Warren, the former director, was interviewed about why it became the Library of the Year for 2001, he said innovation was one of the keys. Okay, in this older slide as well, several years ago when the library was known as Richland County Public Library, we see brand building along the Wild Things theme, based on the famous murals of the Wild Things in the children's room. And if you look on down, the Wild Place at RCPL sort of hints at that. In a more recent slide from Richland Library, when current director Melanie Huggins came on board, the library's strategic plan went through a major revision, and innovation was adopted as one of the values. And Huggins sees branding as essentially a response to technical innovation. In this slide, I did a search in the Richland Library catalog. In the early days of collection building at RCPL, Richland Library did not build a specific brand collection around the person I searched for, which was Maurice Sindak, but it built books based on its collection based on reviews and book lists and needs and so forth. And finally, this is a more recent snapshot, and it shows the strategic plan. And at Richland Library, it strives to have the best collection, not the biggest, and certainly lets its classes, programs, and educational offerings direct its customers' needs. There you see in this particular slide, this is a recent snapshot of Charlotte Mecklenburg's website, and the purpose of this snapshot is to show the overall brand theme of CML so that you can contrast it with the Imaginon brand theme, which we'll see in a moment. Okay, and this is the actual CML material selection policy. Note that it's very broad in contrast to the more specific identifiers typically used for brands. Okay. And this is an old snapshot of the Imaginon website. One of Imaginon's major points of innovation is that the facility houses 2 integrated institutions, a children's and teen library, and a children's theater. Other institutions have combined those functions, but none seem to have accomplished it on the scale and level that Imagine On has, especially around innovation. And this snapshot is a more recent web snapshot. And when I interviewed Robert Cannon, a former director, he's told me that one of the things he thought was the public associated with CML was, in fact, innovation. And finally, this is the Spangler Library website within Imagine On. The joint use facility brand theme on the collection level is represented here by the first line of the highlights of the Spangler Library. I hope you can see that. A large collection of picture books, fiction, and folk and fairy tales, reflecting the joint nature of the Imagine On collaboration. All right.
We thank each of our speakers. Do you have any questions for any of the 3 of them? Well,
I have a question.
Okay.
My question is for Dave. Can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, how you approach mapping out your workflows?
Sure. How do we approach it? Well, the library, like a lot of libraries, like a lot of organizations, has been on a bit of a continuous improvement kick lately. I don't know if that's something everyone's heard about, but yeah, oh, I see some nods. All right. So they've actually put a lot of resources into training staff on how to do this on their own. So as I said, the steps that we go through are to really sort of map out the current process, get a really good picture of all the steps that are taking place in the current process. And then from there, this is all done with sticky notes on a whiteboard, but then you identify all the issues that you're currently having, all the things that can go wrong, all the things that do go wrong frequently or infrequently, any sort of, just get them all up there. And then you map out that ideal state. So what would be the best way that we could do this with sort of minimum amount of waste, amount of over-processing, amount of travel, all that sort of stuff. And once you got to there, you then start looking at, okay, well, how do we get to that? What do we need to put in place for that to happen? And then you reconcile that with whether or not that will solve the problems that you put up on the board earlier. And so once you got that, then you have to give people responsibility for actually putting those things into place. And that's the sort of process that we go through when we process. You're welcome.
I have a question for you, Dave.
Yes.
In converting to your collection development department, how do gifts management, reading, and preservation, like book binding, get handled? Is that handled by somebody else? Because my department handles all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's different at every institution. We typically, that's sort of done outside of gifts in particular, the weeding. We also have a collection management group as opposed to the development group, so they would handle sort of the weeding of things, the binding of things, and we do involve the selectors a lot in that decision-making process as well, obviously. So those things are going to handle outside of our department, but a lot of the action for the development part sort of flows back our way.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
So my question has to do with that selector role. Would you talk a little bit about how those decisions then get fed into your department in the new configuration?
Sure.
Whether it's a big deal or individual ebook titles at the time level.
Yeah, sure. So we have, we're on a liaison librarian model, so we have subject librarians that have got responsibility for developing or selecting content for all of those subjects. So those decisions are the ones that are made. We use Gobi as our major book vendor, for instance, so the selections are made by the librarians in Gobi. Our department steps in the sort of how we get that bit of taking care of the process. So we're the ones responsible then for placing those orders, getting them into the ILS, paying the invoices and all that kind of stuff. So that's how it would work on sort of an individual subject level. When you talk about things like sort of big deals and things like that, that's where we recently instituted as well. I didn't have time to put this slide in. We now have a collection strategy committee that is the heads of collection development, the heads of ISR, the information services and resources, where the librarians subject librarians are. Our AUL for collections, tech and Skullcom, and so they would get together and they would make decisions on sort of the larger, bigger deals, bigger packages and things like that, where it's not feasible to sort of come out of any one individual's budget. And so they would also be running things like collection, assessment projects and that sort of thing. Does that answer somewhat?
It does, then the licensing piece is handled by that collection strategies group or somebody in your
No,
unit?
we do have part of the change here has been the addition of a specific licensing and copyright librarian who is responsible for reviewing all the licenses, making sure we have terms that are acceptable. I mean, there's the licensing part and then there's the tracking that and making sure people are aware of it. But that is handled within our department.
Thank you.
Well,
Just a question about the branding. You were looking at public libraries. How would you see some of those ideas maybe relating to an academic library?
Well, if you're looking for help with an academic library, I know the ALA has a sort of kit that you can use to sort of adapt it. With academic libraries, it's interesting. I think a lot of times you're working within a university system, and it's sort of a dilemma that public libraries face when they have to work with the whole county, and the county decides to brand. Then the library, the individual public libraries, even if they're huge, like Dade County, they had to brand with along the lines of the county. And so with academic libraries, you have to look for ways in which you can represent your model of service and how that you know, what distinguishes you, what can you do for the students and that sort of thing. You really have to sort of sit down there and think about it and differentiate it. But there's a book about by Doucette, I think, on building your library brand, and she takes you through the steps of how you build a library. It's very simple, very thin, and I think easy to follow. So I would recommend her book.
That's good for Mr. Leong. Is that correct? That's pronounced?
Yeah, it's okay.
So it's about how you leverage some of the trainings, particularly some of the trainings outside the organization. What are a few logistics when you were trying to create the buy-in or the participation in those types of trainings?
What we did actually are in-house training, so we never really send our staff to external providers for training. So just now the training that I mentioned was the Lean Six Sigma training, which is conducted in-house within the university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you also mention there's a government initiative?
Oh, I mean, that is an initiative that is meant for all Singaporeans to leverage on. So we did not, as in, we did not send the staff for training by adopting this, because they actually, what the government gave is a sum of money for all Singaporeans to go for training. But what we did was we adopted the concept. So we did not actually ask the staff to make use of the money to go for library-related training. Yeah, so we kind of just adopted the concept, and during that time there was a lot of buzz behind this Skills Future initiative, so we kind of leveraged on that. Yeah.
Can I add?
Oh, sure.
What did happen though was our model was used in a continuing education program that was built around the Skills Future.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of supported it in a different way.
Thank you.
I have a question. In discussing the increase in your staff, I wasn't clear about how that came about. Was there a needs assessment? Did the dean make a case to the president and he decided to fund new positions? How did you get the additional positions that came aboard after you started?
I did not get additional headcount, so what we did was we looked at what the staff are doing, and request them to unload things that are not necessarily very productive and not creating impact to our library, to our university. Mm-hmm. So things like binding, things like shelf reading. I mean, we are trying to minimize those kind of labor-intensive kind of work, and there are a lot of stuff which we kind of outsource it. Like for example, book processing. So these are the little bits that we thought that can be better handled by an external party, so that we can free up that time so that the staff can be trained and equipped with skills relating to ER-related workflows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions? If so, we'd like to thank our panel.